All right. Good morning, church. How are we doing this morning? It's been an awesome morning. God, just a quick shout out to the worship team. I feel like the worship teams can sometimes do a thankless job, just coming in every Sunday, getting here early on Sunday mornings. But I want you to know, one, because my wife is a part of the worship team, but also I just want you to know that everybody on our worship team takes it so seriously, and so I just want to honor everybody who serves on our worship team, just doing that. Huge thank you. But my name is Nick. I'm the youth pastor here, and so youth camp is right up my alley. And so if you have any questions about what camp scholarships look like, or if you're a parent and have questions about your students going to youth camp, please come talk to me. We want every student to go, and we don't ever want cost to be the reason not to go. So if you have any questions about camp, please come talk to me before you head out today. But to this morning, we are continuing in our series on kingdom culture. Where the intent and the purpose of this is to kind of lay out what the culture of Kingdom Church is going to be moving forward. Because the reality is that culture is really everywhere. Your family has an innate culture within yourselves. Like I think of my own family, and there's a culture that I have, and there's a culture within Britt's family, and so that's why you go to premarital counseling, because you got to figure out how to combine those two cultures and how to deal with them. There's cultures in family, there's cultures in your workplace. I would guarantee that there are specific things that they regularly communicate that they want you to do, because there is a culture that they are striving to achieve. And so the reason why that happens, and Brian touched on it last week, is that culture is something that happens either by design or it happens by default. It happens either by design or by default. When I was in college, being a broke college student, I needed to get a job, and a Jimmy John's was about to open up and kind of launch their store there. Any Jimmy John's fans? Any? Dude. Jimmy John's is so stinking. Their bread, holy smokes, man. Jimmy John's. But I love Jimmy John's. Maybe I'm biased because I worked it, but I love Jimmy John's. But when we're training and doing everything, like you're learning how to make each sandwich, you're learning like how to clean things to do, how to make the bread, you're learning how not to slice your finger off using the meat slicer, all these things that you have to know how to do in order to work there. But one of the things, or the single thing that I remember that we trained more than anything, that we trained over and over again, was the process of actually making sandwiches. Like we probably made hundreds of sandwiches before the store even opened. And the reason is because, as if you're a Jimmy John's fans, you know this. The reason is because Jimmy John's like tagline, or the thing that they're big on, is being freaky fast. Jimmy John's is really quick. Like the goal is to get the sandwich in your hand so quickly. And so I just remember before the store even opened, just making, and we'd have like 20 sandwiches made on a single day that we take home and like give away. And I remember like our store specifically, we were so good. I'm gonna brag on myself. We were so good that every single time that person had that sandwich in their hand as soon as they were done paying. Like we were fast. But the reason why we train that so frequently is because the culture that Jimmy John's had was that, hey, we want to be so fast that you can come in, get your sandwich, and get out. That was a culture that Jimmy John's decided that we're going to design by intent. And so that's the thing that they instill within us, that, hey, no matter what, you need to make this as fast as you can. And I remember our manager, one of the things he wanted to kind of add on to that is that he wanted everyone to just be like over the top, super friendly. And so we made it a habit that anytime somebody walked in, say, hey, welcome to Jimmy John's, the happiest place on earth. And if you know, really the happiest place on earth, it's not Jimmy John's, it's Disneyland. But we ran with it because again, that was just the culture that our manager said, hey, we want everyone to be able to come in and laugh and to smile and just like have, even though they're going to be here a short time and it's going to be fast, we want them to enjoy their time being in our store. And that was all intentional, and that culture was by design. You think of another example of like Chick-fil-A. What is the one thing that Chick-fil-A says every single time when you ask them to do something? My pleasure. And that is a culture piece. That is something that they do intentionally by design. Culture is always present in in everything that we do. So if it's not designed, it'll simply just default to something whether you like it or not. So that's why within this series, the intent of what we want to do is that we want to be so clear on what the culture of Kingdom Church is going to be, is that we want to be clear on the vision, we want to be clear on the direction and the target that we are aiming for as Kingdom Church. Because Proverbs 29:18 says that where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint. In other translations, it actually says that where there is no vision, the people perish. And so it's this idea that you can never hit a target if you never know what you're aiming for. If we don't know what we're aiming for, we don't know what we're striving for. And so within these next few weeks, we are being very specific to say, hey, these are the things that we want Kingdom Church to embody, and these are the things that we're going to strive for, we're going to aim for week in and week out. And so last week, Pastor Brian laid out kind of the everything that we do, every culture piece that we talk about, everything that we do is ultimately going to tie back into our heart, and the culture of Kingdom Church is to very simply do everything for his kingdom and for his purposes. And if it doesn't do that, we're probably not going to do it, because that is not within the culture and the vision of what Kingdom Church is, to do everything for his kingdom and his purpose. So with all that said, this morning I'm going to give you two culture pieces of Kingdom Church. So the first one is going to be this, is that Kingdom Church, we strive to be excellent in execution. Excellent in execution. I remember growing up, my dad was like a very hard, very strict, very intense kind of guy. And so I remember there'd be times that they would ask us to clean our room. Every kid's greatest memory, clean your room. And I remember being a teenager, oftentimes you just kind of pick things up, throw it under your bed, hide it, throw things in your closet. You kind of do what you can to get by. And if my dad just felt so inclined to check, he'd go check. And then later on in the day, he would say, hey, did you guys clean your room? And if you said yes, his response would be, no, you didn't. Because your bed's not made, your stuff's under your bed, you have dirty clothes over the place. He'll kind of point out specific things that sure, you might have made an attempt at cleaning your room, but you really didn't clean your room. And so we learned over time that when he was asking us if we did something, what he was really asking is that if we did it the right way, if we did it the way that we know that we're supposed to do it. And so eventually we learned that when we were asked to do something, do it the right way the first time. Don't just do the task for the task's sake, but do it with excellence. And so at Kingdom Church, we believe, yeah, and all the parents said. So at Kingdom Church, we believe in doing everything with excellence because of who we are doing it for. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says this, that so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. So just to kind of explain what's happening here, the book of 1 Corinthians, Paul is writing to the church of Corinth, who was a really young and fresh, a new church. In the beginning of 1 Corinthians, Paul makes a statement that, the church of Corinth, you're not ready for solid food. And so he's addressing very simple things that we would assume shouldn't be allowed in church. Paul's addressing hey, sexual immorality is not a good thing to have in your church. And he's addressing all these basic things. And then he brings this idea up of something that the church is arguing about of hey, can we or can we not eat food that was used as a sacrifice? So there's this big argument. And so Paul is addressing it. And so when he answers it and he's addressing their question or their issue, he caps it off by saying this in verse 31 that we just read, so that whatever you do, whether you eat or drink. And he just kind of throws in this additional statement of whether you eat or drink. As a matter of fact, whatever you do, and every single thing that you do, whether you're eating or drinking, whether you're doing anything, everything that you do ought to be done for the glory of God. So if everything that we do is to be unto God, then excellence, what it's really about is bringing our best. If everything that we do, big or small, is ultimately about us glorifying God, is ultimately about us doing things unto God, then excellence has to be about us bringing our best. Genesis 4, 3 through 5. I want to read this real quick. It says this, that at the designated time, Cain brought some of the fruit of the ground for an offering to the Lord, but Abel brought some of the firstborn of his flock, even the fattest of them. And the Lord was pleased with Abel and his offering, but with Cain and his offering he was not. So Cain became very angry, and his expression was downcast. So what I want to draw attention is to what Cain and Abel brought to God. It says that it lays out that Cain worked the ground and that Abel worked within the flock. So they both had distinct things that they personally were doing. And so they brought a portion of what they were personally engaged in. So Cain, as someone who worked the ground, brought some of the fruit that he had worked. And then Abel, working the flock, to bring some of his flock as an offering. But there is a distinction that is made in Abel's offering. It says that Abel brought some of the firstborn of his flock, even the fattest of it. Whereas Cain very simply just brought some of the fruit that he had. And so the what is happening here is actually described in Hebrews 4:11. And I actually want to read it in the King James Version. It says this in Hebrews. It says that by faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous. So Abel's sacrifice, Abel's offering, what Abel brought to God was excellent. It was done with excellence simply because he gave God the best of what he had. So the difference between Cain and Abel is that Cain very simply just performed a task, whereas Abel went out of his way to please God. And we can see the difference in how God responds to Cain versus Abel is that God is pleased with Abel, whereas he is not pleased with what Cain brought. One performed a task, one went out of his way to please God. We have some rules as a part of staff at Kingdom Church, as any place does. But two that rules that may seem kind of simple, as I want to bring attention to. Rule number one is that we have a zero tolerance on clip art. If you love clip art, I'm sorry, but it just doesn't look good. So we have a zero tolerance on clip art, and we have a zero tolerance on handwritten signs. Because let's be real, if I'm writing these signs, there is no shot that anybody's reading anything that I'm writing. So those rules, no clip art, no handwritten signs. Like we can hear those rules and be like, oh man, this seems so simple. It seems so inconsequential. Why is it a big deal? And they are simple things, but the reason behind them is that we don't want to just throw things together with clip art because it's easy to do. We don't want to just handwrite a sign because it'll take a minute to do. We don't want to just perform a task for the sake of performing a task. We don't want to just bring some fruit. We want to bring the best of the flock. We've established as staff that the standard is high because we believe that making a sign, as simple as it may seem, is still being done unto God. And if it's being unto God, God deserves the best of what we have to offer. Now, I do want to hear this idea of excellence. What excellence is not is doing more. Excellence is not just putting more effort. It's not trying harder. We live in a culture that, especially in my younger generation, that tries to convince you that there's always a side hustle that you can do. There's always more that you can work. There's always more money that you can make. You can invest in crypto. You can biohack. You need to sleep less. You need to drop ship. You need to do all these things that convinces you that if you're not doing more, you're not doing enough. But what excellence is not, it is not a measure of your effort. Excellence is the measure of your character. It is not a measure of the effort of what you put in. It is the measure of your character. Because what it does is that it asks the question, did you do your best? Did you do what's right? And did you do what you're supposed to do? When my dad asked if I cleaned my room, he wasn't asking if I performed a task. He was asking, did you do it right? And did you do it with your best? So to give some examples of this, what excellence is taking your shopping cart back to the section and not just leaving it on the curb in the parking lot for somebody else to come and fix for you. What excellence is something as simple as seeing trash in the lobby and picking it up and not just expecting somebody else to do it because You just don't feel like doing it. What excellence is treating the waiter at your restaurant with dignity and respect, even if they forgot your refill. Let me just tell you, and just this is a bit of a soapbox, and I'll openly admit that. As somebody who's worked as a waiter in college, every single person said, I refuse to work Sundays because the church crowd is the worst crowd to serve because they don't tip and they treat you the worst. We as the church have got to lead with excellence in how we treat people and how we treat them with dignity and respect, even if it's the waiter who may be having a bad day, you don't know, but we still lead with excellence in everything that we do. Not just when we feel like it, but we lead in excellence because when we're tipping that waiter, we are representing and glorifying God. When we are talking to that waiter, when we are taking our cart back, we are representing the one that we serve. Excellence means that if you're serving in church, you serve with your best. It's understanding that every note you play on the worship team, every hand that you shake when you greet, every coffee that you make, you are doing for the glory of God. And when we can grasp that idea, our only response can be to bring our best. We do everything with excellence, and we give our best in everything that we do because everything that we do is for Him. At Kingdom Church, we strive to be excellent in execution. The second culture item that I have for you this morning is that we at Kingdom Church have an all-in attitude. We have an all-in attitude. Romans 12:1 says this, that therefore, I exhort you, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a sacrifice. If you write in your Bible, if you circle the word sacrifice. Present your bodies as a sacrifice, alive, holy, and pleasing to God, which is your reasonable service. This week, actually, I did a little bit of research on the phrase, the term all in. And all in has actually not always been a positive thing that people say. Back in like the 19th century, it was commonly used to describe something that was actually really negative. Like if you were all in, you were exhausted, you were worn out, like you were down in the dumps. Like all in was not a good thing. Even like it was actually used like within the stock exchange. If the stocks were all in, it meant that they were doing terrible, like horrendously terrible. But when the phrase all in actually turned was thanks to the explosion of a popular game called Texas Hold'em in the 1990s. Personally, I love Texas Hold'em as long as it's not real money, but I do love the card game of Texas Hold'em. And so just to kind of, because this will kind of lead into where we're going. If you don't know how to play, let me just real quickly explain what Texas Hold'em is. Basically, you have cards in your hand, and every turn you are betting, hopefully not real money, you are betting that you have the best hand out of everybody else is playing. And as every turn goes, you will typically bet more and more money the more confident that you are that you have the best hand out of anybody else who's playing. And so the term all in is the move that you make when you say, hey, I'm so confident that I'm going to win this, and I'm putting everything that I have on this hand that I'm saying, there's no way I'm going to lose this. So you're all in because all of your money is until you push everything to the middle. You say, I'm all in. Like, I'm either winning this or I'm losing this right now. I'm fully in or I'm fully out. And so that's where the term all in came in. And I remember, just to share a quick story, a couple years ago, we went to Texas to visit Britt's family for Christmas and found that somebody had a poker set. So we were playing, and after a bit of time, Britt's grandpa somehow was just like smoking everybody. Now, her grandpa is a really like intense dude. Worked construction his whole life. Like kind of emotionless, like kind of scary, kind of intense. And so we're playing, and he's just beating everybody. And he got to a point that almost every single hand he was like, hey, I'm all in. And it comes to your turn. Obviously, you got to determine like, is he bluffing or whatnot. And there are a few times like it would come to my turn, and I'd look at him, and I won't try to mimic because he has like a real thick accent. So for my own dignity, I won't try to mimic it. But I would look at him and he'd be like, go ahead, do it. every single time. But yeah, that game, for sure, every single one of us lost. But at Kingdom Church, we want to be we want to be all in. We want to be devoted. We want to be devout. We want to be dedicated to the plans of God. We want to live our life pushing all the chips to the middle, say, hey, I am all in. I'm not holding anything back, but I am all in on what the plans and the purposes of what God is going to do. What we cannot be is that we cannot afford to be fence sitters. We can't one day decide to be all in and the next be completely removed from the situation. Pastor Brian said last week that in order for a culture to stick, a culture has to be consistent. It has to be consistent. We live in a culture at large today that is constantly swaying and changing on what the norms of life are, that is constantly changing on what what is viewed as truth, is constantly moving the goalposts of what is acceptable and what isn't. And so in a society that is always changing, that is just always swaying, we need to be consistent in our convictions, consistent in our attitudes, consistent in our dedication and our commitment to live for the purposes, for the plans of God in the midst of a society that is always changing. Not just for a couple hours on a Sunday morning, but Sunday to Sunday, every single day. Culture is not consistent on Sunday mornings. Culture is consistent every single day. When it comes to being all in, we as Kingdom Church as a whole, we collectively want all of us to be all in. We want to be all in how we worship. We want to be all in how we love God, love people, and love community. We want to be all in how we pray for one another. We want to be all in on reaching the lost. We want to be all in collectively in what we do for the kingdom of God. But the all in attitude that we want Kingdom Church to have has to start with you individually. Because being all in collectively can only happen when we're all in privately. It can only happen if every single one of us in our own private, quiet times are making the choice to be all in. Because if we can't be all in privately, we can't expect Kingdom Church to be all in collectively. We can't sit back and hope that one day the church will just kind of pull us along and we'll find ourselves in a place of being all in. It has to be a choice that you make on your own that then pushes the church collectively to be all in together. Galatians 6, 7-9 says this, "Do not be deceived. God will not be made a fool, for a person will reap what he sows. Because the person who sows his own flesh will reap corruption from the flesh, but the one who sows to the Spirit will reap eternal life from the Spirit. So we must not grow weary in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not give up." This verse is talking about when the work, the things that we do, the way that we dedicate ourselves to God, when we are doing it all, and then suddenly it becomes hard. Suddenly it feels like the things that we're doing feels unfinished. It feels unrewarded. It feels like we have nothing to show for our commitment and our dedication to God. When we are all in worship, when we are all in prayer, when we are fully devoted to the plans of God, and yet our experiences and our senses tell us that there is nothing coming from it. When life becomes hard, when it seems like we have nothing to show for it, Paul says, don't grow tired and don't grow weary, because of what Paul says in verse 7, that God will not be mocked and that a person always reaps what he sows. A person will always reap what he sows. Now let's be honest. Being all in can be hard, because all in is not an emotion. Being all in is not a feeling that we get. All in is a choice that you intentionally make every single day. It's waking up and choosing to be fully devoted to whatever God wants to do, and doing it again the next day, and then doing it again the next day. It is a choice that we make. And sometimes it could be hard to make that choice to be all in. When we're stressed about work, when we're stressed about finances, about relationships, when we can feel just bogged down and be dealing with real strife and just real anxiousness and depression, like in the midst of dealing with real life stuff, it could be hard to make the choice to be all in. But church, I believe that if we can just catch this, that when we keep sowing, God is always faithful to bring the harvest. If we can just catch that, no matter what we're feeling, no matter what we're going through, if we can just catch that if we just keep sowing good seed, God's promise is that there is always a harvest to reap. And that harvest, because the thing that I'm giving to you, the thing that we're sowing, this idea that we're sowing day in and day out an all-in attitude. We are sowing a fully devoted life. We are sowing a full dedication and commitment to the plans and purpose of God. When we are continuing to sow those things, what we reap, the thing that we reap when we keep sowing that, is a move of God. When we are fully devoted, when we are completely all in, sowing over and over, the harvest that we reap is a move of God. I think too often, and Ben, you can make your way up. I think too often, the things that we can find ourselves praying about or coming in and asking God for are often tangible things, right? Like God, help my finances. God, give me wisdom. God, heal this thing. God, I want peace. I want a better job. And what's incredible is that God is such a loving and gracious God that he gives and does all of those things. But sometimes we just need to get back to a place that all we want is just a move of God. Where all we want is just an outpouring of the Spirit of God. Where all we want is just to be in the presence of Jesus. To be able to be like Paul, who sat in a jail cell and was completely content with what was going on, because even though his circumstances were terrible, he still had the presence of Jesus with him. Someone like Mary, who in the midst of her sister trying to do all these things, the only thing that she was concerned with was coming and sitting and being at the feet of Jesus. Someone like Peter, who was so zealous in his love for Jesus, was willing to step out of a boat and do something that seemed impossible because he just wanted to get to Jesus. So when was the last time that we just came before Jesus for the sole purpose of being in the presence of the one who gave everything for us? When was the last time that we came to God with no agenda, with no strings attached, with no request, but with the sole intent of being in the presence of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords? To say that, God, I am all in with whatever it is that you have for me. God, I'm going to keep sowing good seed. God, I'm going to keep dedicating myself to you. I'm going to keep devoting myself to you because I want to experience a holy move of your Spirit in my life. That is the thing that we harvest, church, when we continue to sow a life that is all in for Jesus. That is what we reap. But the question that Paul poses, that we just read in Galatians, is will we become too tired to keep sowing? Will we give up being fully devoted? Will we give up being fully dedicated? Will we be all in on more than just a couple hours on a Sunday, but every day saying, God, I'm all in. I'm pushing all the chips to the middle of the table because I've got nothing to lose. Because the one that I serve is faithful to every promise, because the one that I serve is the same yesterday, today, and forever, because the one that I serve has never failed and he is not going to start now. So my question this morning is this, is that will you be all in? If we can stand up on our feet with me. Going to do something a little different this morning. In a moment, the team's going to lead us in a new song that we've never done before. And I just believe that in that song, the lyrics reflect the very nature of what being all in is about. It says if we want to throw the lyrics up while I'm saying we can, but if not, no worries. But in the verse it says that all that I'm compelled to bring, is my everyday offering. I am compelled to bring myself to Jesus. When I had you circle sacrifice in Romans 12, because we are called to live daily as a living sacrifice. All we are compelled to bring is my every single day offering. And then the bridge, the lyrics talk us about that. It says, hell is not scared of a Sunday faith. If Sunday faith just leads to empty praise, but what makes darkness run is when the saints arise and praise on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and every single day. I want that to be the heart of this church. That on Mondays we praise him. That on Tuesdays we glorify him. That on Wednesdays we worship him. That on Thursdays we do everything every single day to lift up Jesus. To be fully devoted to him. But before we get to the song, first I want to do a prayer team if you guys want to make your way up. First I want to do this. If you are in this room this morning and you are not saved, you don't have a relationship with Jesus, I'm not going to make this long, I'm going to make this real quick. Today's the day that you can make that right. All you got to do is come up, and I would encourage you, in a moment, I'm going to kind of have a response thing, but in a moment, if you need to accept Jesus, I want you to come forward. I want you to grab one of our prayer partners here. I want you to talk with them. They'll encourage you. They'll love on you, and they want to pray with you to seal that decision that you're going to make. But if you need to accept Jesus, all I'm going to say is that today's the day to do it. Don't miss out. For the rest of us, I simply ask, are you all in? In a few moments, I'm going to give a call to respond and then to come forward. And you may ask, like, Nick, what's the point of an altar call? It's not because we have like a special sauce up here that like you can only get when you come up here. But there is something powerful that happens when we connect an inward decision with an outward expression. There is something powerful when we make a decision to say, Jesus, I am all in with you, and I am so all in with you that I'm going to do something physically with my body to demonstrate how devoted I am to you. There is something powerful about us stepping out of our comfort zone and saying, God, I want what you have, and I will do whatever it takes. Peter, standing in the boat, Peter had the faith that it was Jesus on the water, but it took his physical step to go and meet him out there. Sometimes we need to bring our faith in with a physical action. Sometimes we need to take a physical step of faith to come and meet Jesus. So here's my call. Two groups of people. Some this morning may need to say, God, today I'm making the choice. I'm making the decision to be all in. I'm all in not just on Sunday, but I'm all in. I may not even feel like it today, but I am choosing to be all in. Second group is this. Maybe, and I was debating on doing this, but maybe you walked in today and maybe you feel tired and you feel heavy. You feel burdened. Maybe the thing that you need to do is to be like Mary and not care about anything else that's going on and just simply come to the feet of Jesus. So wherever you find yourself, whether you need to be saved, whether you need and you haven't, but you need to make the choice to devote yourself fully to Jesus and to be all in, or maybe you just need to be at the feet of Jesus. What I'm going to ask you to do, I'm not going to linger here long. I'm just going to count to three. On the count of three, I'm just going to ask if any of that's you. I'm just going to ask you to come forward and to fill this space up here. 1, 2, 3. If that's you, just make your way up here. Don't worry about the person next to you. Don't wait for the person next to you. This is between you and God. team is going to lead us in this song. And I want to challenge you to sing this song, not just as reading words on a screen. But that it would be the cry of our heart. That God, I'm just compelled to bring myself to you. That I want to be a saint who arises every single day and gives praise to you. So team's going to lead us, and then we'll just kind of go from there. But let's sing this song for a bit.